So what's X, Y and Z? From Brisbane, the latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. What were X, Y and Z, the new content areas mentioned in Spotify's Investor Day briefings? Just listen to Alex Nordstrom as audiobooks, then X, Y and Z appear on screen.
There are additional markets and verticals that we believe are natural fits for our platform and audience. There's audiobooks, there's news, sports and education. Those are vast markets.
So news, sports and education then. Another two pieces of detail from the Spotify Investor Day from CFO Paul Vogel.
30% of our monthly active users engage with podcast content globally.
Now that figure hasn't been disclosed for some time. Last we heard it was 22% in October 2020. Mind you, Spotify aren't making too much money from podcasts quite yet.
Only a minority of podcast time spent was monetized by us in 2021. In fact, of the 7% of listening hours coming from podcasts, approximately 14% are currently monetized by us on a global basis.
If they're only monetizing 14%, there's quite some way to go. iHeart's Conal Byrne has written for Forbes yesterday promoting the benefit of RSS, which was soundly denigrated by Spotify in their presentation. More on that on Monday. Mayor Prohovnik also said this on stage.
On average, every new anchor show brings 2.5 additional MAU to Spotify.
She's talking about monthly active users, of course. The company also unveiled that Anchor powers 3 million podcasts on Spotify. So according to us, these figures suggest that Anchor has been responsible single-handedly for 7.5 million new users for Spotify. And given that a majority of people don't listen to podcasts yet, the majority will be new podcast listeners. And that's good. Evergreen Podcasts and Big Wig Media have announced a partnership to make podcasts and vodcasts for government agencies and DC-based corporate and advocacy groups. Substack has announced Summer of Sound, a month-long workshop for podcasters and audio-based publications on the platform, with mentorship, guidance and a stipend. You have until June the 21st to apply. PRX and Google Podcasts have announced the 2022 cohort for the Google Podcast Creator Program. The Apple Store on the Champs-Élysées in Paris has announced a number of sessions on podcast creation. They're free, you just need to register. Acast has re-signed David McWilliams, a popular Irish podcaster. It's also made a distribution deal to get its shows onto Resso, the, quote, world's first social music streaming platform. I hadn't heard of Last.fm then. Just Women's Sports, a media platform, has raised $6 million. The company has a number of podcasts and previously raised $3.5 million in May last year. The DuPont Columbia Awards are open for entry, awards that have been going for over 80 years, recognizing excellence in audio and video journalism. Podcast Studio Pro is a new template-driven tool built to allow multiple people to work together on podcasts. It's from the makers of Writer's Room Pro, used by many of the biggest TV shows. Podstock is tomorrow. It's a podcasting conference in Trenton in New Jersey, and Umbral version 0.5 has been released, a Bitcoin node popular with podcasters. It's now easier to install with new Bitcoin and Lightning apps, and more security for other apps on the device like Helipad. However, looking at support groups, it sounds as if you're best not to upgrade quite yet. And in podcast news, the new episode of PodChat released today is with Captivate CEO Mark Asquith. The time for exciting things needs to take a break, he says, and we need to get really good at the basics. There's nothing to writing, said Ernest Hemingway. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. The Bleeders launched this week from Courtney Kosak. It's a podcasts and support group about book writing and publishing. You can expect conversations with authors, agents, and people in the publishing industry about how to write and sell books. This is Small Business is new from Amazon, produced by Jar Audio, hosted by Andrea Marquez. Listeners will hear stories from small business owners about pivotal moments in starting, building and scaling their business, and learn from real-world experiences shared by industry experts. And First Person is new from the New York Times, hosted by Lulu Garcia Navarro. It talks with people living through the headlines to help us make sense of our complicated world. Lulu was previously at NPR's Weekend Edition. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.